It starts with flashing lights painting the inside of an old pickup truck cab. A weary sigh from the driver, a man who knows this scene by heart. A black man, pulled over by officers whose judgment is already made. They see an easy target, someone accustomed to staying silent. They laugh, they posture, they exert their assumed authority. But tonight, the script deviates. The man they've chosen, the one they underestimate, is not who they think he is. He's the catalyst they never saw coming, and the fragile world of impunity they inhabit is about to shatter. Before this unexpected confrontation ignites, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss the moment the power dynamic flips. It began like any other stop destined to go wrong. Flashing lights ignited the rearview mirror, painting the cab of Marcus Jones's old pickup in strobing blues and reds. He pulled over smoothly to the curb, the engine settling into a quiet rumble. Hands on the wheel, 10 and 2. A habit ingrained since childhood, a silent defense mechanism. The side mirror showed 2 officers approaching, both white. The older one, Sergeant Frank Miller, moved with the stiff-backed arrogance of a man convinced of his own authority. The younger, Officer Ben Carter, followed hesitantly, his uncertainty visible even in the dim light. Marcus kept his gaze forward, waiting. The sharp rap on the window. Marcus lowered it partway. "Evening, officer." His voice was calm, level. Miller didn't return the greeting, his eyes scanning Marcus, then the truck's worn interior. "What are you doing in this neighborhood?" The question was less inquiry, more accusation. "Driving to my mother's house. She lives 2 blocks from here." Miller smirked. "Your mother lives around here?" The disbelief was insulting, intentional. Marcus simply nodded. "Yes." Carter shifted behind Miller, hand hovering near his belt. "License and registration," Miller demanded. "License is in my back pocket. Registration's in the glove box." "May I reach for them?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice even. Miller gave a slow, reluctant nod. Marcus moved deliberately, announcing each action, avoiding any sudden movements. He handed the documents over. Miller glanced at them, then back at the truck. "Vehicle like this stands out around here." Marcus offered a faint smile. "Guess it does." Miller didn't appreciate the response. "What do you do for a living, Mr. Jones?" The question was off topic, a probe. "I run a tech consulting business," Marcus replied simply. Miller snorted. "Tech, huh? Right." The familiar mocking disbelief. "Anything in the truck we should know about?" "No, officer." "Step out of the vehicle." The command was sharp. Marcus paused. "Excuse me?" "Step out, now!" Carter looked surprised but stayed silent. Marcus unbuckled and exited calmly, hands visible. Miller circled the truck. "Mind if we take a look inside?" "I do mind," Marcus stated evenly. "Unless you have probable cause or a warrant." Miller's thin smile vanished. "Refusing a search? Got something to hide?" "I'm exercising my rights." Carter shifted again, looking uneasy. But Miller was committed now, his ego engaged. "Hands on the hood." Marcus didn't move. "Officer, I've complied. There's no reason." Miller stepped closer, voice low. "Think you're smarter than me? Hiding behind fancy talk?" He knew this dance. It wasn't about law. It was about control. Miller grabbed Marcus's arm, turning him toward the truck. "Hands on the hood." Marcus placed his palms flat on the cool metal. As Miller began a rough pat-down, Marcus spoke softly. "Officer, are you sure this is the path you want to take?" The question momentarily froze Miller, but pride pushed him onward. "Don't take advice from suspects." Marcus smiled faintly. "I'm not a suspect, but you might want to call your supervisor before this goes further." Miller sneered. "That a threat?" "No," Marcus replied. "A courtesy." Before Miller could react, his radio crackled urgently. "Unit 12, command request status on civilian Marcus Jones. Immediate response required." Miller frowned. "What the—" Carter grabbed his mic. "Unit 12, subject detained, vehicle check." Routine. Pause. Dispatcher's tone sharpened. "Negative, Unit 12. Release Mr. Jones immediately. Repeat. Release subject now. Do not engage further. Supervisor en route. ETA 2 minutes." Miller's face paled. Marcus turned his head slightly. "Tried to warn you." An unmarked black SUV swept alongside them. A tall woman emerged, badge clipped to her belt. Federal, Agent Davis. "Officers," she announced, her voice crisp with authority. "This stop is terminated. Return Mr. Thompson's, Mr. Jones's documents and step away." Miller stammered, Who are you?" Davis flashed her ID. "Homeland Security. Mr. Jones is a contracted federal consultant assisting on an active investigation." Her eyes narrowed. "You've just made a serious error." Carter stepped back quickly. Miller stood frozen, speechless. Marcus took his documents, nodded to Agent Davis, and calmly returned to his truck, leaving the two officers stunned under the flashing lights of their own cruiser. The system had just turned on them. The silence following Agent Davis's intervention was heavy, punctuated only by the receding sound of Marcus Jones's pickup truck. Sergeant Miller stood dumbstruck, the federal agent's words echoing in the humid night air. Federal consultant. Active investigation. The implications crashed down on him. This wasn't just a bad stop. This was potentially career-ending. Maybe worse. Officer Carter looked pale, avoiding Miller's furious gaze. Agent Davis watched them both, her expression unreadable. "Your supervisor will be here shortly," she stated coolly. "I suggest you have a coherent explanation ready. Though frankly," she added, turning back towards her SUV, "I doubt any explanation will suffice." As she drove away, leaving them alone on the roadside, Miller rounded on Carter. "You knew?" he snarled. "Did you know who he was?" Carter shook his head frantically. "No, Sarge, I swear! How could I?" But Miller wasn't listening. Panic clawed at him. He'd messed up, badly. He'd profiled, harassed, and nearly illegally searched a man with federal connections. A man clearly investigating something. His mind raced. Damage control. He needed to get ahead of this. Meanwhile, Marcus drove, not home, but to a secure, discreet office building. Inside, his team, Tasha, cybersecurity, Jared, data analysis, Nina, legal research, waited. They'd monitored the stop remotely. "Confirmation," Marcus said grimly as he entered. "Miller and Carter are definitely part of the pattern, and they're reckless." Jared pulled up data on the main screen. Maps, charts, financial flows. Operation Nightingale is entering its critical phase. Miller's stop confirms they feel untouchable, likely due to protection from higher up. The project's goal: expose systemic corruption in the department, specifically the misuse of civil asset forfeiture funds linked to racially biased traffic stops. Miller and Carter's names were frequent flyers in the data. "The stop wasn't random," Nina added, reviewing legal precedents. "It fits the pattern of targeted harassment against individuals perceived as unlikely to fight back or possess resources. They just picked the wrong individual this time." Tasha brought up another screen. "And Miller's already scrambling. Made calls right after you left the scene. One to Captain Evans, his superior. Another to a burner phone number we haven't traced yet." Marcus nodded. "He knows he's exposed. He'll try to discredit me, make me the villain." His prediction proved accurate. By the next afternoon, a hastily written piece appeared on a fringe local news blog. "Controversial consultant with anti-police ties under scrutiny." It vaguely referenced Marcus's past community work, twisting it into activism, hinting at ulterior motives. It was clumsy, desperate. But Miller, panicking, made another mistake. He underestimated Marcus's community standing. Almost immediately, responses flooded social media. Local business owners, church leaders, parents from mentorship programs, all defended Marcus's integrity, sharing personal stories of his help and character. The smear attempt backfired, drowned out by authentic voices. Miller, furious and increasingly desperate, decided on a more direct approach. Tasha's surveillance picked it up, an unscheduled, unapproved traffic checkpoint planned for that night, targeting the route Marcus usually took home. "It's a setup," Jared confirmed. "They'll hope to find a minor infraction, escalate it, maybe plant something, create grounds for a legitimate arrest to discredit you before the federal investigation gains more steam." Nina looked worried. "We have to warn Agent Davis." Marcus considered it. "We will, but we're not shutting it down." His team exchanged uneasy glances. Tasha, Marcus asked, can you ensure our audio and visual are streaming securely? Witnesses? Tasha nodded. Pastor Riley and retired Judge Peters are on standby, ready to follow and record. Marcus looked at his team. They want to play dirty. They expect me to hide. Instead, we walk into their trap, but we make sure the whole world is watching when it springs. That night, Marcus drove his pickup towards the illegal checkpoint. His palms were sweating, but his resolve was firm. As expected, flashing lights ordered him to pull over. Sergeant Miller himself approached the driver's side, Officer Carter hanging back, looking profoundly uncomfortable. Mr. Jones, fancy meeting you here, Miller sneered, trying to project control. Routine safety checkpoint. Marcus kept his hands on the wheel. There are no posted signs for a checkpoint, Sergeant. This stop appears unlawful. Miller's face tightened. Step out of the vehicle, sir. As Marcus complied, maintaining a calm demeanor, he subtly glanced down the road. Pastor Riley's car was parked discreetly, camera likely rolling. Miller began his routine, overly aggressive, trying to provoke a reaction. Been reports of suspicious activity, vehicle matches, description. Marcus simply stood, waiting. Miller, frustrated by the lack of reaction, gestured towards the truck bed. Need to take a look back here. I do not consent to a search, officer. Miller's temper flared. Playing lawyer again? That just makes you look guilty. He stepped closer. Maybe we just tow the truck, sort it out later? Just as Miller reached towards Marcus, headlights flooded the scene. Black SUVs converged, boxing in the patrol cars. Doors opened. Federal agents emerged, weapons holstered, but stances alert. Agent Davis stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. Sergeant Miller, Officer Carter, this illegal stop is terminated. Miller spun around, shock rendering him speechless. Carter visibly sagged with relief. Davis continued, her voice ringing with authority. You are both under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction, and federal civil rights violations related to Operation Nightingale. The name hung in the air. Miller finally understood. This wasn't just about one bad stop. It was about everything. DOJ investigators moved in, cuffing a sputtering, protesting Miller and a compliant, pale Carter. News crews, alerted by Marcus's team, arrived just in time to capture the arrests, the flashing lights illuminating the stunning downfall of Sergeant Frank Miller. Marcus watched calmly, then turned to Agent Davis. It's not just them, he stated quietly. Davis nodded grimly. We know. And thanks to you, we're just getting started. The arrests of Miller and Carter sent tremors through the department and City Hall. Operation Nightingale was no longer a classified federal probe. It was front-page news. The carefully constructed wall protecting the corrupt elements began to crumble. Officer Carter, facing serious federal charges, quickly agreed to cooperate fully, providing investigators with detailed accounts of Miller's methods, the pressure tactics, and, crucially, the implicit protection offered by Captain Evans. Carter confirmed Miller often boasted about Evans having his back, ensuring complaints disappeared and procedures were overlooked. Simultaneously, the public exposure emboldened others. Linda Price, a mid-level clerk in the city finance department, haunted by irregularities she had witnessed for years, contacted Agent Davis anonymously. She provided proof, meticulously copied ledgers, altered invoices, internal emails, showing how funds seized through asset forfeiture, particularly those handled by Miller's unit and signed off by Captain Evans, were being systematically diverted. Large sums were funneled into vaguely named Community Policing Initiative funds, or awarded through no-bid contracts to companies secretly linked to Evans and at least 2 city council members. Linda's evidence was the linchpin, connecting the street-level abuse documented by Marcus to high-level financial corruption. Armed with Carter's testimony and Linda Price's financial records, the DOJ moved against Captain Evans. His arrest was less dramatic than Miller's, conducted quietly at his home, but the impact was profound. The captain, the man who represented the department's leadership, was directly implicated in the criminal enterprise. The city council members panicked, attempting to distance themselves, but the money trail Linda had uncovered was undeniable. Facing indictment, They resigned in disgrace. The federal investigation widened, uncovering years of buried complaints, falsified reports, and potentially other criminal activities shielded by the network. Marcus Jones, working alongside Agent Davis and the DOJ task force, provided crucial analysis, using his tech skills to trace digital footprints and financial connections the corrupt officials thought they had erased. He became a key witness in the grand jury proceedings. He also worked tirelessly with community leaders, like Pastor Riley, channeling the public outrage into constructive demands for reform, an independent civilian oversight board, transparent data reporting on stops and seizures, revised use-of-force policies, and mandatory bias training. The fight was grueling. There were setbacks, veiled threats against Marcus and the whistleblowers, attempts by remaining network allies to obstruct the investigation. But the momentum was unstoppable. The trials of Miller, Evans, and the others concluded with guilty verdicts across the board. Substantial prison sentences were handed down, sending a clear message that impunity was no longer guaranteed. And in the aftermath, the city began the long, arduous process of rebuilding. A new police chief, committed to reform, was appointed. The Civilian Oversight Board was established. Linda Price was commended for her bravery. Officer Carter, having cooperated, received a reduced sentence and agreed to participate in training programs focused on ethical policing. Marcus Jones stepped back from the direct spotlight, returning to his consultancy, but establishing the Nightingale Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to using data analysis to support communities fighting systemic injustice nationwide. One evening, months later, Marcus stood looking out his office window at the city lights. The work wasn't finished. Corruption finds new roots. Systems resist fundamental change. But tonight, the city felt different, safer, more hopeful. The silence wasn't one of fear anymore. It was the quiet confidence of a community beginning to heal, a community that had learned never to underestimate the power of truth or the courage of those willing to fight for it. Marcus Jones's story reveals the dangerous consequences of underestimation and the incredible power unleashed when someone refuses to be silenced. It highlights how deeply corruption can embed itself within systems meant to protect us, fueled by bias and greed. But more importantly, it shows that even the most entrenched networks are vulnerable when confronted with courage, evidence, and collective action. From a single wrongful stop to the dismantling of a citywide conspiracy, this narrative proves that accountability is possible, that change can happen, and that the fight for justice, though often long and difficult, is always worth waging. If this story of resilience, strategic action, and hard-won justice resonated with you, please show your support. Like this video, share it to inspire others, and subscribe for more stories that demonstrate the profound impact individuals can have when they stand up against the odds. Thank you for watching. Never underestimate the power of truth.